Let me share with you something that changed the way I lived, worked, and even thought. A principle so simple yet so profound, it's almost criminal how few people apply it. It's called the 80-20 rule. Now, the official name, if you want to sound smart at a dinner party, is the Pareto Principle. Named after an Italian economist, Vilfredo Pareto, he noticed something interesting over 100 years ago. He observed that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by just 20% of the people. Later, this principle showed up everywhere, not just in economics, but in business, health, relationships, and yes, even in your personal life. Now let me break it down in simpler terms, Jim Rohn style. It means a small portion of what you do is responsible for the majority of what you get. 20% of your efforts, if you're paying attention, produce 80% of your results. Let that sink in. You see, most people are busy being busy. They spend all day chasing rabbits, putting out fires, doing 10 things at once, but getting very little done. Why? Because they're spreading their energy across the 80%, the part of life that's noisy but not productive. Let me give you an example. In business, it shows up when you realize that 80% of your sales come from 20% of your clients. That's not just theory, that's measurable. You sit down with a list, and you'll find it almost every time. 20% of the products make up 80% of the revenue. 20% of your team does 80% of the producing. Now don't miss this. That means 80% is either inefficient, underperforming, or simply noise. And yet that's where most people spend their day. In relationships, you'll find the same. About 20% of the people in your life bring you 80% of your joy, energy, and strength. And conversely, often 20% of people cause 80% of your stress. Think about it. 1 or 2 people in your life can either lift you or drain you. And what about your time? Have you ever sat down and tracked where your time goes? Most people haven't. But if you do, you'll be shocked. You'll find that just 20% of your time is spent doing the real productive stuff. The meaningful conversations, the creative work, the health-building habits, the rest. It's being chewed up by distractions, interruptions, aimless scrolling, and low-return tasks. Now here's what's dangerous. Most people never pause to evaluate. They don't stop long enough to notice the pattern, and so they keep living in the 80%, chasing things that don't matter, investing in people who don't care, and filling their calendar with things that drain them. One of the first turning points in my life, and maybe it will be for you too, was when I stopped and said, wait a minute, what if I cut the noise? What if I focus my energy, my effort, and my time on the small few things that truly matter? That's when things changed. Let me tell you a story to illustrate. There was a farmer, wise and seasoned, who owned a large piece of land. But year after year, he noticed that only a small corner of his field produced a rich, abundant harvest. The rest of the land gave him mediocre results. Hard soil, bad drainage, low yield. Now, he could have spent his time trying to improve the whole field, pouring resources into every acre. But instead, he made a choice. He focused his attention, his fertilizer, and his care on the most fertile 20% the next season. His harvest doubled, not because he worked harder, but because he worked smarter. That's the 8/20 rule in action. He didn't abandon the rest of the field. He just stopped giving it the lion's share of his energy. That's a powerful lesson. Now here's what I learned, and I pass it on to you. With all the sincerity I can offer, most of life's rewards come not from doing more, but from doing less, better. From identifying the few things that move the needle and giving them your best effort. But here's the catch, this principle only works if you do the work to uncover your 20%. It takes some reflection, it takes some truth-telling, it takes stepping back from the hustle and asking, what's actually working? What's really bringing me results? You see, if you don't measure, you can't manage. If you don't reflect, you can't correct. And if you don't evaluate, you'll keep giving your life to the wrong things. Here's another quick parable for you. There was a woodcutter who was working furiously in the forest, chopping trees from morning till dusk. But each day, he grew more and more exhausted, and his pile of wood grew smaller and smaller. A wise old man passed by and said, "Why don't you sharpen your axe?" The woodcutter replied, "I don't have time. I'm too busy cutting trees." And that's how many of us live. We don't pause to sharpen our minds, review our efforts, or align our focus with what matters most. We keep swinging harder, but we're using a dull axe on the wrong tree. The 80/20 rule is like sharpening your axe. It's about stopping long enough to see what's working, to step back from the frenzy and say, let me focus on what truly brings results. And here's the first challenge I'll give you for the next week. Take inventory. In your work, in your time, in your relationships, look for the pattern. What 20% is bringing you the best return? What 80% is filling your calendar but not your cup? Make a list. Get honest. And then get ready. because in the next section, we're going to walk through how to identify your productive 20% and start building a life around it. Remember, it's not that success is hard, it's that focus is rare. And if you can focus on the right things, you'll be amazed at how quickly things begin to transform. Once you understand the 80-20 rule, really understand it, the next logical question becomes, all right, Jim, how do I find my 20%? And that, my friend, is a golden question. Because awareness alone is not enough. Knowing the principle is like owning a map. But unless you read it and walk the road, it won't take you anywhere. So let's talk about how to read your map. Let me start with one of my favorite reminders. Don't major in minor things. That's it. One of the great tragedies of life is spending major time on minor matters, putting your best energy into things that won't matter a year from now, or worse, tomorrow. So how do we fix it? How do we zoom in on the few things that count? It starts with evaluation. You've got to ask yourself regularly, what's working? What's really working? Not what's keeping me busy, not what's urgent, but what is producing real results in my life? Let's say you run a small business. Look at your customer list. You'll find that maybe 20% of those customers bring in 80% of your revenue. They're the loyal ones. They come back, they refer others, they pay on time. Now, wouldn't it be wise to treat those 20% like gold? Maybe send a handwritten note, give a loyalty reward, build a better relationship. Instead of chasing new customers, what if you nurtured the right ones? The same goes for your skills. Maybe you've got 10 things you can do, but 1 or 2 of those things really make you valuable in the marketplace. You write well, you solve problems, you lead with clarity. That's your gold mine. That's your 20%. You've got to take inventory. Let me give you a simple tool. I call it the 3R test: results, relevance, return. Results, what are you doing that's producing actual, visible outcomes? Relevance, what are you doing that connects directly to your bigger goal? Return, what are you doing that gives you the highest return on your time, energy, or money? If it doesn't pass at least 2 out of those 3, chances are it's part of the 80% you can start letting go. Now let me tell you a story. There was a young sales rep, full of ambition, fire, and hunger. But every week he'd spin his wheels chasing every lead, answering every call, attending every networking event. He'd stay up late, wake up early, and by the end of the month, his numbers were average. One day his mentor sat him down and said, "Listen, you're working too hard on the wrong things. Go back through your last 6 months of sales. Who bought? Who referred? Who repeated?" The young man did just that. He found that a handful of clients accounted for almost all his commissions. So instead of casting a wide net, he focused deep. He started cultivating those relationships, finding more people like them, and within 90 days, his income doubled. Not because he worked longer, but because he worked smarter. That's the power of identifying your productive 20%. Now let's bring it closer to home. Think about your health. Maybe you're doing 10 things: vitamins, shakes, new workouts, reading about sleep cycles, buying supplements, watching videos. But what's actually making you feel stronger? Maybe it's that 30-minute walk every morning. Maybe it's just drinking more water and cutting the sugar. Small hinges swing big doors. Same thing with learning. You could read 50 books. Or you could reread the one book that changed your thinking and apply it. That's 20% behavior. Depth, not just breadth. Let's talk relationships for a moment. You can go to 10 parties, make 20 new contacts, smile for 100 selfies. But real connection, that might come from one deep conversation with someone who sees the world like you do. One call to a friend who speaks truth. One mentor who sharpens your vision. The lesson here? Don't confuse motion with meaning. Don't confuse activity with achievement. I used to say, if the why is clear, the what becomes easy. And once the what is clear, once you've got a list of your most productive, valuable, and rewarding activities, here's what you do. You multiply them. You do more of the 20% that works. You schedule it. You protect it. You build around it. You double down on what brings results. Now let's flip the coin. Just as important as finding your 20% is recognizing what to cut from the 80%. Because here's a truth worth writing down. You cannot add more value to your life without subtracting what drains it. That's the secret to focused success. Remember this, every I ask is a no to something else. So if you say yes to things that belong in the 80%, time-wasting meetings, pointless tasks, low-quality habits, then you're robbing your future. Quietly, silently, but surely. You've got to become a master of intentional neglect. That means leaving the lesser things undone so the better things get done. That's not laziness. That's wisdom. So here's the next challenge I'll give you right now. Today, take an hour, get quiet, take out a notepad. On one side, list the things in your life, work, health, relationships, finances, that are bringing you the biggest return, joy, growth, money, peace. That's your 20%. On the other side, write down what's taking up your time, but giving you little back, that's your 80%. And then make a decision to cut, limit, or delegate the 80%. And to invest, grow, and protect the 20%. That one habit, practice consistently, will put you in the top 5% of performers in any field. Because the truth is this: the difference between average and extraordinary isn't talent, it's focus. And most people never pause long enough to see what's really working in their lives. But not you. You're here. You're ready. In the next section, we're going to take it even further. I'll show you how to apply the 8-20 rule to your time, your habits, and your goals. And when you do that, you'll start building momentum like never before. But for now, remember this simple Jim Rohn law. It's not the hours you put in, it's what you put in the hours. And the 20% you choose makes all the difference. Let's get down to where the rubber meets the road: your time, your habits, and your goals. Now here's a phrase you've heard me say before: time is more valuable than money. You can get more money, but you can't get more time. And the biggest problem I see: most people treat time like it's infinite and treat money like it's sacred. That's backward. You see, money is a resource, renewable, replaceable. Time, once it's gone, it's gone. So let me ask you a question, friend. Are you spending your time, or are you investing it? Let's bring the 88-20 rule into your schedule. Take a typical day, say 16 waking hours. The truth is, maybe just 2 or 3 of those hours are truly productive. That's your 20%. That's when you're focused, clear, creative, decisive. The rest, often spent reacting. Emails, distractions, meetings, noise. Here's the tragedy: most people give their best hours to the wrong activities. They wake up, check their phone, get lost in news or gossip. By the time the important tasks show up, their best energy is already spent. That's like giving your best fruit to the garbage and the scraps to your guests. Now let me tell you a story. There was a young writer who dreamed of publishing a book. He said, "Jim, I work on my manuscript every night after work, but I just can't seem to finish it." I asked him, "When do you do your best thinking?" He said, "Honestly, early in the morning. I'm sharp, I'm fresh." I said, "Then you're wasting gold. You're giving your best to your job and your leftovers to your dream." He made a change. He started waking up an hour earlier and wrote from 6 to 7 a.m. before the day swallowed him. 3 months later, finished manuscript. 6 months later, book deal. He didn't need more time. He needed better use of time. That's the 80-20 rule in your hours. Now let's talk habits. You've probably heard the saying, your habits determine your future. That's true. But here's the twist: not all habits are created equal. Some habits are foundational, keystone. They cause a ripple effect across the rest of your life. Example: exercise. It doesn't just improve your body. It sharpens your mind, boosts your energy, helps you sleep, lifts your mood. That one habit has an 80% impact. Same with reading, even 15 minutes a day of good material. That one habit can upgrade your thinking, your vocabulary, your confidence, your income. So ask yourself, which of my habits give me the greatest return? Which ones, if practiced consistently, would transform everything else? And then build your schedule around them. Protect your power habits like gold. Anchor them into your morning. Tie them to routines, stack them, track them. Because here's the deal: discipline is remembering what you want. If you want the reward, you've got to respect the rhythm. Now let's move to goals. We all have goals, or at least we should. But the 80-20 rule applies here too. Some goals are noise, vanity. They sound good on paper, but they don't move your life forward. Others, game changers. Let me tell you what I call a 20% goal. It's a goal that once achieved makes 100 other decisions easier or irrelevant. For example, let's say you're deep in debt. You have a dozen small goals: save money, cut spending, work more hours. But if you set one major goal, become debt-free in 12 months, suddenly the smaller decisions fall in line. You know what to say no to. You know what to cut. That one focus clears the fog. That's a 20% goal. Or in business, instead of trying to grow 17 income streams, maybe you choose to master just one deeply, thoroughly. That one stream becomes the river. You see, people spread themselves too thin. Too many maybe goals. Too many half-finished projects. I like to say, don't start the next thing until you've mastered the first thing. Now here's a quick analogy. Imagine you have a pile of rocks, big ones, small ones, gravel, and sand, and you've got to fit them into a jar. If you start with the sand, the distractions, there's no room for the big rocks, the priorities. But if you start with the big rocks, the important things, the rest will settle into the cracks. That's how life works. Your jar is limited, so start with the things that matter. And here's how to apply this tomorrow. Choose your top 2-3 habits that give you the most return, mentally, physically, emotionally. Block your most productive 2 to 3 hours of the day and protect them like a vault. Identify one big goal that simplifies your life and make it the center of your weekly focus. This isn't about doing more, it's about doing less, better. Let me give you one last story. There was a woman who felt overwhelmed, running a business, managing a family, trying to get healthy, learn new skills, read books, attend events. She said, "Jim, I feel like I'm drowning in to-do lists." I asked her, out of all the things you're doing, which 3 make you feel the most alive, the most productive, the most proud at the end of the day? She paused. Coaching my team, writing, morning walks. I said, then build your day around those 3 and let the rest fall into place. 6 months later, she sent me a note, more income, better health, clearer focus. She didn't add anything new. She just focused on the few things that mattered. That's the 8RJ20 mindset. So here's your challenge this week. Identify your top 2 hours of energy, anchor your top 2 habits into those hours, choose one goal that makes everything else easier, simple. Not easy, but powerful. Because the difference between a scattered life and a focused life is knowing which 20% of effort builds the 80% of the life you want. In the next section, we'll talk about what's standing in your way, the 80% that drains you, distracts you, and delays your progress, and how to finally let it go. But for now, just remember, success isn't doing more things. It's doing the right things with excellence. Let me share a simple truth that changed my life. You can't add what's valuable until you subtract what's unnecessary. That's the forgotten half of success. Most people try to improve by adding more tasks, more habits, more apps, more ideas, more commitments. But let me tell you, often the fastest way forward is to remove. You see, it's not always what you're doing that's holding you back. Sometimes it's what you're tolerating. That's the 80% we've been talking about. It's the distractions, the low return tasks, the draining people, the unproductive habits, the little compromises, all nibbling at your energy, your time, your clarity. If you want to rise to your full potential, here's the rule: let go to grow. Now, I'll be honest with you, this isn't the easy part. Cutting things out feels uncomfortable at first. But as I used to say, if you don't design your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into someone else's plan. And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. So let's take a good look at what's in your way. Start with distractions. Let me ask, what's eating your time? I'm not talking about emergencies. I'm talking about the little time thieves. Scrolling through your phone, jumping from one notification to another, reacting instead of acting. You'd be amazed how many people lose 3, 4, 5 hours a day to nothing. Not creation, not thinking, just consumption. And the worst part? They feel busied, but they're not productive. They feel exhausted, but they've built nothing. That's 80% behavior. If you want to be in the top 20% of performers, here's a principle to live by: control your input, or your input will control you. Set boundaries with your devices. Limit your social media time. Turn off non-essential notifications. Create focus hours where nothing gets in unless it earns its way in. Let me tell you a quick story. A young entrepreneur came to me once overwhelmed. He said, "Jim, I feel like I'm constantly running, but not getting anywhere." I asked him to audit his day. Where does the time go? Turns out he was spending almost 3 hours a day checking emails and responding to every message as it arrived. I told him, that's not business. That's addiction to activity. He changed one habit, scheduled email blocks, 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. That one boundary gave him back 15 hours a week. He used that time to write, think, create, and within months, his business grew faster than it had in a year. He didn't work more. He just removed the distractions. Now let's talk about toxic habits. Maybe it's procrastination. Maybe it's junk food, negative self-talk, binge watching TV. These things feel small in the moment, but over time, they rob you blind, not just of time, but of self-respect. You can't build a strong life on weak habits. So here's what I recommend. Don't try to fix everything at once. Just pick one low-value habit and replace it with a high-value one. If you're used to watching Netflix at night for 2 hours, switch half that time to reading or journaling. You don't need perfection, you need momentum. Now, here's a big one: people. This might sting a little, but I'll say it plainly. 20% of the people in your life are responsible for 80% of your stress. Not because they're evil, but because they drain your focus, question your vision, gossip instead of grow, and pull you back when you try to rise. Jim Rohn law. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So take inventory. Who are you around most? Who energizes you? Who sharpens your thinking? Who makes you want to be better, and who doesn't? Now, I'm not saying cut everyone off, but I am saying this: limit access to your mind and energy. Be kind, but be clear. Be generous, but don't be gullible. You don't have to attend every argument. You don't have to answer every call. You don't have to explain your priorities to people who don't have any, because your energy is expensive and the wrong people are cheap. Let's also talk about commitments. Some of the things on your calendar were once exciting, but now they're dead weight. That community group, that side hustle, that volunteer thing you no longer believe in. Let me give you permission. It's okay to quit the wrong things. It's okay to say, this no longer serves my mission. In fact, it's necessary. Remember, every time you say yes to something unimportant, you're saying no to something essential. Here's a short parable for you. There was a man carrying a heavy load up a mountain. At first, it was manageable. But as he went on, he picked up more things, sentimental rocks, useless tools, bags others asked him to carry. Halfway up, he was exhausted. A fellow climber said, "Why don't you drop the load?" He replied, "I don't want to offend anyone, and some of these I've carried for years." But the truth was simple. He could never reach the top until he let go. You, too, may be carrying things that once made sense, but now they're keeping you stuck. And that's what this section is about, elimination for elevation. So here's your challenge. Make a list of your biggest distractions and create one new boundary for each. Identify one habit that weakens you and replace it with a strengthening habit. Evaluate your relationships and spend more time with your uplifters than your drainers. Look at your calendar and cancel one commitment that no longer aligns. Don't try to change everything at once. Just start removing the obvious clutter. The 80% that steals your joy, your focus, your fire. You'll be surprised how light you start to feel. Because when you subtract the unnecessary, you reveal the extraordinary. I'll leave you with one final reminder. Discipline is not just what you do, it's what you refuse to tolerate. And when you remove the noise, you'll start hearing the signal of your true potential. In the next section, we'll tie it all together. I'll show you how to make the 80-20 mindset a lifestyle, not just a strategy. We'll talk about how to apply it to your growth, your leadership, and your income, and how discipline, when rooted in clarity, creates the life you've always imagined. But for now, cut the clutter, lift the weight, and prepare to rise. So here we are, my friend. You've learned what the 80-20 rule is. You've seen how to identify the few activities that yield the greatest results. You've applied it to your time, your habits, your goals. And you've started cutting out what drains and distracts. Now it's time for the ultimate step, to live it. Not as a moment, but as a mindset, a way of thinking, a filter for every choice, because that's what transforms your life. I like to say, success is not something you pursue. It's something you attract by the person you become. And the person who masters the 80-20 rule becomes focused, intentional, powerful. So let me ask you something simple, but serious. What if the life you want isn't far away? It's just buried under the 80%. Think about it. The income, the clarity, the health, the relationships. Maybe they're not hiding from you. Maybe they're just waiting on you to focus, to strip away the noise, to say yes to what matters and no to what doesn't. That's the $80-20 mindset. Let me give you a real life story. There was a man I met at a seminar years ago, mid-40s, owned a small business, talented but tired. He said, "Jim, I work 60 hours a week and I feel like I'm standing still." So I asked him, "What part of your business makes you the most money?" He said, "Consulting, just a few clients, but they pay well and trust me." I said, "And what do you spend most of your time on?" He sighed. "Admin, fixing problems, chasing leads that don't convert." There it was, the $80-20 imbalance. So I gave him a challenge. Cut your work week to 40 hours. Spend 30 of those on your top clients and high impact growth. Outsource or delegate the rest. He did. Within a year, his income doubled. He had more time with his kids, more energy, more peace. Not because he did more, but because he did less of the wrong things and more of the right ones. That's transformation. Now let me give you a few simple ways to adopt the 80-20 mindset for life one. Audit everything regularly. I used to say, a life worth living is a life worth reviewing. Don't just set goals. Review your results. Ask yourself weekly, what gave me the most joy, income, or growth this week? What felt like wasted time? Reflection is the key to course correction too. Make decisions through the 80-20 lens. Before you commit to something, ask, will this give me long-term return or short-term satisfaction? Is this one of the few things that truly moves the needle? Most people say yes too quickly and no too slowly. Flip that. Your time is a vault. Guard it. 3. Live with clarity, not complexity. In leadership, whether in business or at home, the best leaders focus on a few clear priorities. They don't chase every new trend. They double down on what works and they teach others to do the same. One of the best gifts you can give your team, your family, or your community is clarity. 4. Multiply the results, not the chaos. You want to grow your income. Don't just work harder, work sharper. Ask, what part of my skill set brings the highest reward? What audience values me most? What offer delivers the most transformation? Build around that. Don't dilute your energy trying to please everyone. Because remember, you can't reach the top if you're carrying everything with you. Now here's a short parable to seal this lesson. A young monk approached his teacher, frustrated. "Master," he said, "I study all the teachings, I attend every class. I recite every chant, but I feel no peace." The teacher smiled. "Come with me." He took the young man to a river and handed him a heavy bag of stones. "Carry this and cross the river," he said. The student tried, but the weight pulled him under. He came back gasping. The master said, "No, take just one stone, the smoothest, the most valuable, and try again." This time, the monk crossed easily. The master said, "You don't need more teachings, you need fewer burdens. Peace is not found in adding, it's found in choosing." The same is true for your life. Choose the few things that matter most, then give them everything. Now, I won't lie to you. Living the 80-20 life takes courage. Courage to say no. Courage to walk away from what's good in order to reach what's great. Courage to go narrow, not wide. Deep, not shallow. But that's where the reward lies. And here's the most powerful truth of all. When you focus on the 20% that matters, the 80% often takes care of itself. You become healthier because you no longer self-sabotage with chaos. You grow faster because you stop splitting your energy 10 ways. You lead better because your priorities are visible and contagious. You earn more because you bring more value to fewer things. It's not magic, it's focus. So here's my final call to action for you, the Jim Rohn kind. Don't wait for a perfect moment. This is the moment. Take control of your time, your habits, your circle, your calendar, your inputs, your standards, your life, and begin to ask every day with discipline and honesty, what is the vital few? And what can I let go of today to become the person I'm meant to be tomorrow? Because the good life is not made of everything. It's made of the right things. And if you'll focus on your 20%, you'll transform the 100% of your life.